Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's flash webinar titled Forgetting Something, One Key Hiring Skill You Cannot Overlook. I'm your host, Dr. Zach Mural. This flash webinar series is brought to you by Expert Online Training. I'll tell you a bit more about Expert Online Training in a minute, but first I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I am currently the Vice President of Education for the Miniland Academy family of schools in Northern Virginia. We're a company that serves infant through school age. We have one K-8 middle school, and as the Vice President of Education, I'm responsible for our staff development, our curriculum development, and our overall training of about 1,600 staff members. I'm also a longtime camp counselor and camp director. I own and operate Youth Development Consulting that does staff training, program development, and consultation for summer resident and day camps. I'm also a columnist for Park and Rec Business Magazine, and most importantly, I'm also a faculty member for Expert Online Training. Expert Online Training was founded in 2007 by Dr. Chris Thurber and his friend Evan Helte. It's a website that hosts a library of video training modules for youth leaders. Since 2007, more than 4,000 camps and youth programs have subscribed to EOT to complement their wonderful on-site training. No director has enough time to cover every topic during on-site training, so EOT is there to fill the gaps. I'm proud to say that I'm an Expert Online Training faculty member, and I've hosted a couple of videos on after-school programs, and I'm looking forward to offering a few more this summer. EOT has more than 100 videos on a wide range of topics in these 6 categories: leadership, youth development and play, mental health and behavior, physical and emotional safety, supervision, and creative literacy. If you want to learn more, please just visit expertonlinetraining.com. Today's flash webinar will last approximately 20 minutes. We'll focus in on that one key element of hiring that you may not be thinking about and are overlooking. There won't be an opportunity for Q&A during the webinar, although there is a chat box on the GoToWebinar box on your screen. I also encourage you to email me. My email is beneath the picture, Zach, Z-A-C-H, at youthdevelopmentconsulting.com, and I'll be more than happy to respond to your email following the webinar. So please, if you have any questions, just make a note and email me after the presentation. So, what do you look for in an ideal staff member? We all have our job descriptions. I'm sure they list a number of factors. You want someone who's smart, educated, committed, honest, skilled, someone who's excited to work at a summer camp. What really matters, though, when you get down to it, is you want someone who you know is going to keep your campers safe. You want someone who you know is going to work well with the other staff members. You don't want someone who's going to cause waves or be that person who's constantly instigating or gossiping or creating issues that don't need to be there. You, of course, want someone who follows your procedures and your instructions, and you want someone who will represent your camp well to the public, not only on those important opening and closing days when you have families in camp, but also outside when they're wearing a camp shirt or a staff shirt. And then, of course, when it really comes to what they do at camp, you want someone who's a great leader, a mentor, is wonderful at building relationships with the campers, and is also able to teach and impart their wisdom and their knowledge, their activity-specific skills. And how do you really know about that last factor? Rarely do I encourage out-of-school time programs or summer camps to look to the classroom for guidance, but in this case, I think it's important because in schools, educators talk about the difference between content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. Content knowledge is really the learning areas, the skills in schools, reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and pedagogical knowledge is teaching skills. How well can you relate that information to a novice and help them understand? At camp, there's really 2 levels of content knowledge. There's activity-specific skills, whether you're a traditional camp or you're doing recreational programs or an academic camp, a drama or arts camp. Most camp have a series of skills, at least at some part of the day, that they're trying to impart. The other part is youth development skills, those critical life skills, building relationships, feeling confident, feeling competent, being honest, the character values, those sorts of things that we want campers to learn, develop, and then take away when they leave the camp experience. And so for a camp counselor, a camp staff member, the pedagogical knowledge is about teaching not only those activity-specific skills, but also relating those other important character and life skills to the camper. So what we know is we have pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge, but there's an intersection. There's a place where the two meet. And again, in academics, they call that pedagogical content knowledge. How well are you able to teach a specific skill or a specific thing? Just because you're an expert in an area doesn't mean you're able to teach it. Conversely, just because you're able to teach something or teach well doesn't mean you're able to teach something specifically. So I'll take myself as an example. When I was a camp counselor, I taught sailing. I had sailed for a number of years. I raced at the national level, and so I had a fair amount of content knowledge in terms of the hows and whys of how boats work and how you sail and get around the lake. When I started at camp, I didn't have a lot of pedagogical knowledge other than the way I had been taught, and that's what most of us have until we get specific instruction, is we teach the way we were taught, either how I learned, in my case, sailing, or how I learned other things at camp and in schools. But my PCK, or pedagogical content knowledge, was how well was I able to teach sailing to kids at a summer camp. For me, honestly, initially it was much easier to teach the beginners or the really advanced campers than it was for me to teach that intermediate group. Because for the beginners, I knew to start at step one, parts of the boat, names, where the wind comes from, that sort of thing. With the advanced campers, I could use technical jargon and we could connect and share ideas, but that middle group was harder for me because I had forgotten what it was like to be in that space. And so my PCK was probably lacking when it came to teaching intermediate sailors how to sail. So what does PCK look like at camp in activity areas? A few things. One, it's breaking down activity-specific skills and behaviors into components, steps, or pieces. So not forgetting to mention to a novice archer how to nock the arrow. All those different things that start at step one and take you through to the completed product are really, really important. You can have good PCK in one area and not so much in another. So you might be a very competent archer and a very competent soccer player, and you're really, really good at coaching soccer and teaching the fundamentals of soccer, the intermediate soccer skills, and kind of the bigger picture of soccer and game strategy, but you're not such a good archery teacher. Maybe because you've never really thought about how to break it down into its component steps, maybe because you're a little bit too advanced and you can't relate to a beginner. There's a number of reasons. So at camp, in the activity areas, you want someone who can help make connections between a child's current understanding and the new knowledge you want them to acquire, catch those misconceptions or misunderstandings before they become habit, and then walk that line between making something oversimplified or too easy or making things too complex. What does the PCK look like, though, from a youth development perspective? And this is a little bit harder. Really what you're looking for is someone, you've already identified that you want counselors who care about their campers, who are really good people, who model those character values, are honest, they have a high degree of integrity, they're on time, they're caring, they're committed, all those different pieces. But how do you teach that to a camper? And really, it's your actions. It's recognizing that all of us learn through observations. Do as I say, not as I do is a fallacy. And so at camp, someone with good pedagogical content knowledge when it comes to the youth development skills is someone who makes those relationships a priority, who is intentional in what they do and how they do it, and then is able to capitalize on teachable moments. And so we all know that camp life is incredibly busy. There's 100 different things going on at once, and the most important thing fundamentally is that camper-counselor relationship. And so you might be in a situation where you've got a crisis in the back of your head that you're going to the office to deal with. You realize you're late to lunch. You realize you told somebody else that you would grab something from the infirmary and bring it back to them, and one of your campers all of a sudden is tugging on your arm and wants to tell you a story about something that happened during the first activity period. And the really good counselors, even in the heat of that moment, can balance the relationship. And they might not be able to stop at that moment and have the conversation, but they can put a hand on the shoulder and say, I'll get back to you, or let me find you at lunch, or let me find you at rest hour. I'd love to hear about that. And they show excitement, and they exude excitement for that camper who's excited. That's important. That's an important step in maintaining and building relationships. Being intentional. Again, when I was a counselor, I had older boys who were often very concerned about their image and doing something wrong. And I remember after a few years, I started to, in the first day or two of camp, I would do something intentionally incorrect. I would spill the clothes off my rafter board or spill some milk on the table or something, trying to not make it too obvious, of course. But then that gave me an opportunity to debrief and to model that it's okay to make a mistake and to kind of laugh at yourself. And you clean it up and you move on, and that's not a big deal. And knowing that I was someone that my campers ultimately looked up to, that helped to set the tone for them that camp is a safe place to be yourself and to take a chance and try something new. And it's okay if you fall down or if you fail. No one's going to laugh at you, or if they do, it'll be good-natured, and then someone will help you up, and we'll all try it again. So you want someone who can take those life skills and those things that who they are, to make up who they are, and share that with campers, and not only through their actions, but also the conversations that emerge as a result of the things that go on at camp. Now, the real trick here is you only have a little bit of time to interview. So you might have references that say this is a wonderful person. You might have experience having them as a former camper. But how do you really know in the amount of time that you have that somebody not only has the content knowledge that they're a good person and they have maybe some activity-specific skills that you're interested in them sharing with their campers, and pedagogical skills that they can teach, but they can bring the two together and teach those things that you want them to teach and you want them to share with your campers. A few suggestions. Ask them directly, can you tell me how you teach something? How would you teach a beginner to sail? How would you teach a novice to sail? How would you teach two kids who might be getting into an argument in the middle of a basketball game? What concepts related to whatever it is you're interested in them teaching do you think kids might struggle to understand? Ask them to put themselves in the learner's perspective and think about what things might be difficult to grasp and why. Ask them to give you a scenario or pose hypothetical questions that kids might ask about a skill. Kids might not understand why you can't sail directly into the wind, or why you need to put more arc on a shot in archery from 40 yards than you do from 20 yards. And so asking them to answer some questions that you expect campers might ask them can give you an insight into their ability to connect the material and then also really understand what a learner might go through. Ask them directly, what should kids expect to take away from camp? Why are they there? Are they there because all their friends work at camp and they're interested, and we've all seen this person, in continuing their own social growth and development with their peers? Or do they have the understanding that they're there to impart knowledge, be it, again, activity-specific or youth development skills? And ask them to go deeper and tell you more about why kids should get that out of their experience at camp, and then what they're going to do in their position, if they're offered a position, to help make sure that the campers get there. And then another great question is, what are the most important or the most challenging things about being a leader? And so ask them what they expect would be the hardest part about being a counselor, about being the head of sailing or riflery, or teaching a group of novices to put on a play, or helping some kids who are struggling with some material catch up. Whatever it is you're hiring someone to do, ask them, what do you think would be the most challenging part about being the leader? What do you think would be the most rewarding part? What about the relationships? What's important in their relationship with the campers that they're trying to, again, connect with and share with? And these kind of questions, they're open-ended, and they give you opportunities to learn more about the candidate. Even better than questions, though, ask them to do something. Bring a small checkerboard. Ask them to teach you how to play checkers. Then you'll see, most people understand checkers, at least at a basic level. Are they able to break it down? Are they able to explain to you the rules and something about, and if you do something wrong, how do they correct you? Have them write a short one-paragraph note. It doesn't have, don't tell them not to worry about spelling or grammar, although you might be interested in seeing how they do there too. Have them write that note to their campers and see in that first introduction paragraph what kind of things they say. Are they asking about the camper? Are they just talking about themselves? Are they talking about camp? Are they sharing some things that'll happen? That'll give you a sense of, again, are they able to connect those important youth development, relationship, teachable moment, intentionality opportunities, which are right there in that opening paragraph of a letter. teach them something they probably don't know how to do and see how they are as the learner. You may not know how to make an origami paper crane, but you can learn easily with a tutorial online. Develop a little skill and teach them and see how they respond. See if they get frustrated. See if they ask questions. That can tell you a lot about their potential as someone who can teach and relate knowledge, as how they take to new knowledge. After all, this is someone that you're going to want to train. You're going to have them in at your staff training. You're going to ask them to watch modules. You're going to ask them to do different things to prepare for their role. How open to learning new ideas and trying new things are they? And then another great one, this is more of a question, but it gets to their experiences, is have them describe their best teacher ever and ask them, are there things that they would emulate, or are there things that even their best teacher did that they think they would do differently or that they plan to do differently? Again, put them in the shoes of the teacher and the role. A couple of things to think about as you're asking these questions, as you're doing these activities. These are some things, if I hear or see, I tend to get a little bit concerned and maybe have some pause before I'm ready to make a hiring offer to somebody. Statements like, well, everybody knows this, or everybody knows that, to me indicates perhaps a little bit too advanced of knowledge, or they haven't taken the time to really think about the component steps or where to start. And again, if this is a counselor and training candidate who has never had the opportunity or the need to think about it, that might be okay, because you may have trainings in place to help them get where they need to be. If you're hiring someone who's going to be the head of your equestrian program and they expect everybody to know that, you know, these are the different pieces of tack and this is how you saddle a horse, well, that's problematic, because not everyone does know that. And so that would be an indication that their knowledge perhaps is a little too advanced, or they haven't given thought. Answers that come too quickly or oversimplified. We've all interviewed people who just want to give you one or two sentences and then smile and nod and want to move on. And it's incumbent on you to push, to dig a little bit deeper and try to get them to really open up. But if they're not willing to open up, if they're not willing to really think about and pause and at least try to explain how they would do something, or why they would do something, or how they felt in a moment, or try to teach you something, then again, I would be a little concerned. And then finally, any preconceived notions that this person might have. Very, very rarely is someone going to make a blatantly discriminatory statement. However, you may hear things when you ask questions that give you pause. Well, you know, kids in this group or that group might struggle with this, or I found that when I work with this type of kid versus this type of kid. And I personally that really catches me off guard and raises concerns, because I don't want someone with a preconceived sense just because someone is the member of a certain group that they're either have or do not have a specific skill or the ability to gain that skill. And so those are all things that I would keep an eye out for. The things that I get excited about hearing is recognition that it's a process, that teaching isn't something that's easy, that it takes time, that just like you all are hearing information right now in this webinar doesn't immediately make you an expert in hiring, even if these are ideas that you've heard before. It takes time for everybody to change their behavior. We're creatures of habit. They're a creature of habit. They have preconceived ideas. Even if they've been teaching a specific skill for 20 years, they should recognize it's a process and that it's going to take the learner time to get from point A to point B. Ideally, they'll talk about themselves as a teacher and that being a process too, and that each time that they teach an activity, I didn't remain not so great at teaching intermediate sailors. I observed my assistant who was really good with that group, and I picked up some of the things that she did, and I started doing those. And so I got better at that because I recognized that was an area I needed to work on. Acknowledging the challenges, and then really being open. Again, that's why that crane activity is so nice, to learning and training. You want someone who is willing to take an honest, reflective look at their own practices and their own predispositions and beliefs, and really genuinely assess those and see if there are things that they can do to get better as a counselor and as a role model, as a teacher of activity-specific and character-type skills. So, to wrap a few things up, yes, the bottom line, you want someone who's committed, reliable, etc. But that's really akin to the foundation of a house. That's the basic, fundamental, of course, almost the prerequisite. You need that. what you really want is more than that. You want youth leaders who are not only skilled models, but they're capable communicators. They can break down how and why in activities and in their own choices. Why did they go back and ask if this person was okay? Why did they maybe let a younger camper do a little better in a basketball game than they should have? And explain that. Explain why they're making the decisions they're making in a way that's appropriate and relatable to campers. And again, for you and for them, none of this is easy. It's a process to hire. It's a hard thing to, by reading an application, maybe a cover letter, and having a short interview, really get to the heart of some of these things. But if you're able to take the time to do it, if you're able to really think about the skills that you want beyond those surface skills and what it looks like to have really developed PCK and the ability to relate content knowledge and youth development character type knowledge to campers, you're going to avoid making some decisions that ultimately will cost you later. So I hope that this was all helpful. I thank you for joining us today. I encourage you all to join us for December's Flash webinar, Why Good Job Are the Two Most Dangerous Words at Camp and How to Change the Culture of Praise. It'll be on Tuesday, December 15th at 11:30. And on behalf of the entire Expert Online Training team, I want to thank you for tuning in today. If you missed any part of today's webinar, you can visit the blog page of expertonlinetraining.com, where I'll post a recording of the entire presentation. And I'd like to thank you. Again, this is Dr. Zach Mural, and I wish you a wonderful season. Have a great day.